It was a regular Monday morning, and the office was buzzing with the usual chatter, the click of keyboards, and the hum of printers. Everyone seemed busy with their own work, walking past each other with hurried steps and distracted glances. But there was one person who always seemed invisible, a black janitor named Thomas, who quietly moved through the halls, sweeping floors, wiping tables, and carrying out his duties without making any fuss. Most employees barely noticed him, and some even treated him with subtle disrespect, ignoring his presence or making small, thoughtless comments. Samantha, a young woman working in the same office, had joined the company just a few months ago. She was friendly, kind, and always willing to help, but she couldn't help noticing how Thomas was treated differently. She watched as people whispered jokes behind his back, skipped greetings, or even blamed him for minor accidents he had nothing to do with. There was a sharp contrast between his polite, hard-working nature and the cold, indifferent attitude of others, and it bothered her deeply. One morning, as Samantha was heading to the elevator, she saw Thomas struggling with a large trash bin that had spilled over, papers and wrappers scattered across the floor. No one stopped to help, and a few employees even laughed quietly as they walked past. Samantha felt a rush of frustration. She quickly rushed over, knelt down, and started picking up the papers alongside him. Thomas looked up, surprised, and gave a small, thankful smile. "Thank you, miss," he said softly, and Samantha smiled back, realizing that a small act of kindness could mean so much. Over the next few days, Samantha began paying closer attention to Thomas, noticing the quiet dignity with which he carried out his work. He never complained, never argued, and never demanded recognition. Even though he clearly deserved respect, she started greeting him warmly every morning, asking how his day was, and offering small help whenever she could. Slowly, a friendly bond began to form, and Thomas seemed to open up, sharing little stories about his life and past experiences. Samantha listened intently, fascinated by his wisdom and the calm strength he seemed to carry. Despite his humble job, Thomas had a quiet presence that made people feel comfortable. Samantha noticed that when he spoke to children or visitors, they immediately liked him. Yet, in the office, most people overlooked him, treating him like he didn't exist. This made Samantha even more determined to stand up for him in small ways. Whether it was defending him when someone made a rude joke, or simply acknowledging his hard work publicly, she realized that these small gestures mattered. One day, while Thomas was cleaning the conference room, a group of employees entered, complaining loudly about a minor mess he had nothing to do with. Samantha could feel her heart racing. She stepped forward calmly but firmly, addressing them. Thomas didn't do anything wrong. Let him finish his work in peace. Some of the employees laughed, thinking she was overreacting, but Samantha stood her ground, showing that she would not ignore injustice. Thomas looked at her with quiet admiration, a subtle nod of gratitude, and Samantha felt a sense of purpose she hadn't experienced before. As the day went on, Samantha kept noticing how people's attitudes toward Thomas reflected their own insecurities and arrogance. She began to wonder what kind of life he had outside the office, why such a humble man could command such quiet respect from her. Even without being loud or demanding, her curiosity grew, not in a nosy way, but because she sensed there was more to Thomas than met the eye. Something about him seemed different, special, and unexplainable. By the end of the first week, Samantha's small acts of kindness had not gone unnoticed. Thomas would leave little thank you notes, sometimes a small chocolate on her desk, and always a warm smile when she passed him in the hallway. Other employees began noticing her interactions, some with confusion, some with amusement. But Samantha didn't mind. She realized that true kindness wasn't about recognition. It was about doing what was right, regardless of what others thought. That week, Samantha also discovered a new sense of awareness, the way small gestures could build trust and connection. Even in a world that often overlooked people like Thomas, she realized that human kindness had the power to make someone's day, to make them feel seen and valued. And for the first time, she felt like she was part of something bigger than just her job, something meaningful that could change the way she looked at people. Little did Samantha know that this simple act of helping Thomas, noticing him, and treating him with respect was the beginning of a journey that would completely change both their lives. the office, the people, and even Samantha herself were about to be part of a story full of surprises, life lessons, and heartwarming moments, all starting with a woman who decided to protect a man no one respected. The following week brought a tension that Samantha had not expected. It started on a Wednesday morning. When the office was particularly crowded and noisy, Thomas was quietly moving through the corridors, carrying a stack of cleaning supplies, when a young intern accidentally bumped into him, causing a small spill of coffee on the floor. A few employees nearby immediately began whispering and pointing fingers, trying to assign blame. Samantha noticed their smirks and the unfair judgment in their eyes. She felt her pulse quicken, knowing she could not let Thomas face this alone. "Hey, it was an accident," Samantha said calmly but firmly as she approached the group. Thomas didn't do anything wrong. Some of the employees laughed quietly, brushing off her words as if she were overreacting. One of them, a man in his late 20s, sneered and said, "He's just the janitor. It's his job to clean up everything anyway." Samantha's eyes flashed with determination. She knelt beside Thomas and began cleaning the spill alongside him, showing that she would not tolerate disrespect. Thomas looked at her with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. His usually calm eyes seemed brighter, almost as if he had been waiting for someone to finally stand by him. "Thank you, Samantha," he whispered softly. "You always notice." Samantha smiled gently, brushing off the compliment, but inside she felt a warm satisfaction. She realized that sometimes standing up for someone was not about confrontation, but about quiet support and solidarity. After that incident, Samantha made it a point to check in on Thomas more often. She noticed little things that others overlooked, like how tired his shoes were or how the corners of the hallway often went uncleaned, and she quietly helped without making a show of it. Slowly, Thomas began sharing small pieces of his life with her, stories of his childhood, the struggles he had faced, and the dreams he once had. Samantha listened attentively, fascinated by the depth and resilience hidden behind his humble exterior. One afternoon, as she passed the break room, she overheard two colleagues laughing at Thomas again, this time making cruel jokes about his age and appearance. Samantha felt a surge of frustration. She walked in without hesitation, standing between them and Thomas. "That's enough," she said firmly, her voice calm but commanding. "He deserves the same respect as anyone else here." The two employees looked taken aback, mumbling excuses as Samantha turned and walked away. Thomas watched silently, a quiet nod of respect acknowledging her courage. As days passed, their small friendship grew stronger. Thomas began greeting her first in the mornings, and sometimes he would leave little notes of appreciation on her desk, simple words, a thank you, or you made my day, but they carried more meaning than any grand gesture could. Samantha felt a sense of connection she had never experienced before, a feeling that transcended social status or workplace hierarchy. She realized that kindness, once noticed and reciprocated, could form the strongest bonds. Despite her growing curiosity about Thomas, Samantha kept his mystery to herself. She noticed occasional moments when he would receive a phone call and his expression would change, serious and focused, as if discussing something far beyond janitorial duties. She wondered who he really was and what life he had outside these office walls, but she never pressed him, believing that trust and patience were more important than immediate answers. One rainy evening, the office emptied quickly, and Samantha stayed late to finish a report. She saw Thomas struggling to carry a heavy trash bag down the wet hallway, slipping slightly on the slick floor. Without thinking, she rushed to help him, catching the bag and steadying him. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, words were unnecessary. The mutual understanding between them was clear. She saw him, truly saw him, and he trusted her. That day, Samantha walked home with a new awareness of her own strength and compassion. She realized that standing up for someone was never about heroism, but about humanity, about recognizing value where others refused to look. Thomas, in his quiet way, had already taught her more about dignity, patience, and humility than anyone she had known. Little did she know, this bond, formed through small acts of courage and empathy, would soon uncover a life-changing secret that would turn everything she thought she knew upside down. As the weeks went by, the quiet bond between Samantha and Thomas began to grow in ways that surprised them both. Every morning, she looked forward to their brief conversations in the hallway, the small smiles they exchanged over coffee, and the gentle nods of acknowledgement that seemed to say more than words ever could. Thomas, in return, started opening up more, sharing little stories about his childhood in a small town, how he had always dreamed of making a difference, and the challenges he had faced that no one in the office could imagine. One afternoon, Samantha noticed something unusual. Thomas had a folder with neatly stacked papers and what appeared to be financial statements. He seemed cautious as he glanced around, making sure no one was watching. Her curiosity flared, but she resisted asking directly, sensing that some things were meant to be revealed in their own time. Instead, she focused on helping him tidy the conference room, laughing lightly when a stray marker rolled across the floor. That day, she caught a glimpse of Thomas's hands, strong and capable, yet careful and precise, and she realized that he was more than just a janitor. There was a hidden intelligence behind his gentle demeanor. Later that week, an incident occurred that would cement her admiration for him. During a company meeting, a manager criticized the office's cleanliness and unfairly implied that Thomas was responsible for a small mess in the hallway. Several colleagues snickered, expecting Thomas to apologize, but instead, he calmly explained the situation, pointing out that the mess was caused by someone else. His voice was firm but polite, commanding attention without raising it. Samantha felt a surge of pride and relief. She spoke up quietly, supporting him. Thomas handled this perfectly. Let's not jump to conclusions. The manager paused, caught off guard, and the laughter faded, leaving a newfound respect in the room. After the meeting, Thomas lingered near the elevator, and Samantha approached him. "You handled that really well," she said softly. And for the first time, Thomas allowed a hint of a smile. "Thank you, Samantha. It's easier when someone believes in you," he replied. His words lingered in her mind long after she returned to her desk. She realized that her simple acts of kindness had empowered him to stand tall, and in turn, he was teaching her lessons about resilience and quiet dignity. One evening, as she was leaving the office, she noticed Thomas standing near the exit, speaking on the phone in a hushed but serious tone. The conversation seemed important, and the way he spoke suggested authority and influence. Samantha's curiosity piqued, and though she didn't dare interrupt, she felt a sense of intrigue, sensing that there was more to Thomas than met the eye. Something about his confidence, his calm command of the conversation, and the subtle way others treated him with unseen respect hinted at a life completely different from what she had imagined. The next day, Samantha found herself thinking about Thomas constantly. She wondered what kind of person he was outside the office, what dreams he had, and why he remained so humble despite hints of his hidden abilities. Every small gesture, every kind word, every quiet smile seemed to carry weight, and she felt drawn to understand the man behind the janitor's uniform. Little did she know, Thomas had been observing her too, noting her courage, her fairness, and her innate kindness qualities that were rare and precious in a world so focused on status and appearances. Then came a moment that would change everything. The office had organized a small charity event, and Thomas was asked to help set up the tables and decorations. Samantha joined him, arranging chairs and chatting casually. And for the first time, Thomas seemed to relax completely, sharing a story about a friend who had taught him the importance of seeing the good in everyone. Samantha listened, captivated by the depth of his experiences, realizing that the janitor she thought she knew was a man with wisdom, integrity, and a quietly commanding presence. By the end of that day, Samantha felt a strange mix of admiration and anticipation. She sensed that Thomas's life held secrets that would soon be revealed, secrets that would challenge her perceptions and change the way she understood kindness, loyalty, and the true value of a person. As they walked out together, carrying leftover decorations, she glanced at him and felt an unspoken connection, a promise that this story, their story, was only beginning, and that the path ahead would be full of surprises, challenges, and perhaps the kind of life-changing revelation neither of them could yet imagine. The days following the charity event felt different in the office. There was an unspoken sense of change in the air. Samantha noticed how Thomas moved with a quiet confidence. Not the timid, overlooked janitor everyone assumed him to be. He carried himself with purpose. And sometimes, when he spoke to other staff, there was a subtle authority in his tone that made people listen. It was almost as if he had a hidden world outside the office, one that no one, not even Samantha, fully understood. One afternoon, Samantha found herself passing Thomas near the supply closet, and she noticed a small, elegant notebook sticking out of his pocket. The notebook was filled with charts, numbers, and sketches that seemed far beyond the scope of janitorial work. Her curiosity surged, but she reminded herself that some mysteries were best unraveled in their own time. She smiled at him and said casually, "Busy day?" Thomas looked up, a gentle smile crossing his face. "Always something to do," he replied, and with a nod, he continued on his way, leaving Samantha intrigued and a little unsettled. A few days later, there was another incident that tested Samantha's courage. During lunch, a group of employees made a cruel joke at Thomas's expense. Commenting on his clothes and joking about his simple lifestyle, Samantha's blood boiled. She stood up and approached them, her voice calm but firm. "That's enough. You're being unfair. Thomas is a hard worker and deserves respect." The group fell silent, a mix of embarrassment and surprise crossing their faces. Thomas gave Samantha a subtle nod of gratitude, but his expression also carried a hint of something else, pride, as if her intervention had quietly validated him. After the incident, Thomas lingered near the elevator and glanced at Samantha. "You're different," he said quietly, almost as if revealing a secret he hadn't shared with anyone before. Samantha tilted her head, curious. "Different how?" she asked softly, unsure whether she wanted to know. "You see people," he said, "not just their job or what they seem to be on the surface." His words struck a chord in her, and she felt a strange warmth, a connection that went beyond friendship. She realized that Thomas valued honesty, kindness, and courage above all, qualities that she had always tried to live by. Later that evening, Samantha stayed late to finish a report, and she noticed Thomas receiving a phone call in the hallway. His demeanor changed instantly. The calm, humble janitor replaced by someone more confident, more commanding. He spoke with authority, discussing plans and schedules that seemed important and far-reaching. Samantha could not help but wonder what kind of life he led outside the office. She had always sensed there was something extraordinary about him, and now the signs were undeniable. Thomas was more than just a janitor, and soon she would discover just how extraordinary he really was. As days turned into weeks, Samantha's interactions with Thomas grew more meaningful. They began sharing small moments of laughter, stories about their lives, and observations about people around them. Every time she saw him, she felt a mix of admiration and curiosity, and Thomas, in his quiet way, seemed to appreciate her company more than he let on. He would sometimes glance at her with a thoughtful expression, as if considering the right moment to reveal something important. One rainy afternoon, as they worked together in the office, Thomas paused and said, "You know, most people only see what they want to see." Samantha looked at him, intrigued. "What do you mean?" she asked, genuinely interested. "You judge by appearance, by status, by what they assume someone is worth," he replied. "But you see what really matters." His words made Samantha pause, feeling both humbled and proud. She realized that the bond they were forming was not just about friendship or kindness. It was about recognition and understanding, something deeper than anything she had experienced before. By the end of that week, Samantha knew that their story was heading toward a turning point. She could feel it in the way Thomas carried himself, in the small clues he left behind, in the way he looked at her with quiet intensity. She did not yet know the full truth, but the anticipation made every encounter more thrilling. Every conversation, every smile, and every act of kindness seemed to carry hidden meaning, hinting at a life-changing revelation that was just around the corner. Little did Samantha know, the secret Thomas had been holding, the life he had lived beyond the office walls, was far beyond anything she could have imagined, and soon, everything she thought she knew about him, and perhaps even herself, would change forever. It was a Friday afternoon when Samantha noticed Thomas acting unusually thoughtful. He was tidying the conference room after a long meeting, but his movements were slower, deliberate, as if something important weighed on his mind. Samantha hesitated for a moment before asking, "Is everything okay?" Thomas looked up, his eyes meeting hers, and for a moment he said nothing, just smiled faintly, as if deciding whether to reveal a secret he had kept hidden for a long time. "Everything's fine," he finally replied, though there was a hint of mystery in his tone. Samantha nodded. Though her curiosity had only grown, she wondered what could make someone so humble yet carry such an air of quiet authority. She had noticed his confidence, the careful way he handled every situation, and the subtle respect others seemed to show him. Yet no one else seemed to realize it. Later that day, the office announced a small celebration for a charity milestone, and Thomas was asked to help with setup. Samantha joined him, arranging decorations and placing chairs, chatting casually to keep the mood light. She noticed how people unconsciously deferred to him, asking for his opinion on arrangements or details, and though he always remained polite and modest, there was a presence about him that drew attention without any effort. Samantha felt a strange mixture of admiration and intrigue. After everyone left for the event, Thomas lingered, helping with final touches, and Samantha noticed a sleek, black envelope tucked into his jacket pocket. She was curious, but again, she chose to respect his privacy. Instead, she focused on arranging flowers for the tables, feeling the quiet rhythm of working alongside someone she had come to trust deeply. Thomas glanced at her occasionally, a small smile playing on his lips, as if he knew she sensed that he was more than he seemed. As the evening approached, Thomas turned to Samantha. "Would you like to come with me for a short walk?" he asked, a hint of nervousness in his voice that she had never heard before. Samantha agreed, and they stepped outside, the evening air cool and refreshing. The office was quiet now, the lights dimmed, and for a moment, the world felt suspended, as if waiting for something significant to happen. Thomas led her to a small, secluded courtyard near the office, and for a while, they walked in silence, listening to the distant hum of traffic and the soft patter of leaves in the wind. Finally, he spoke. "Samantha, I have something I wanted to tell you. Something personal." Samantha's heart beat faster, sensing that this was the moment she had been unknowingly waiting for. I'm not just a janitor," he said quietly. Watching her reaction, her eyes widened slightly, but she remained calm, urging him with a gentle look to continue. He took a deep breath and explained, in careful, measured words, "I've always kept this part of my life private, because I wanted people to see me for who I am, not for what I have. I am, in fact, a billionaire, someone who has businesses and investments far beyond this office. I've been searching for someone who values character above status, someone who would stand by me for who I am, not what I own." Samantha listened, stunned, the words sinking in slowly. She could hardly believe what she was hearing, yet every gesture, every conversation she had shared with him made it feel plausible. Thomas looked at her, eyes sincere and hopeful. "I've noticed you from the very beginning, how you treated me with respect, how you didn't judge me, how you believed in fairness and kindness. That's why I wanted you to know the truth now, because you're the person I've been searching for." Samantha's emotions swirled, shock, disbelief, awe, and a deep, warming sense of validation. All the small gestures, the kindness, the courage she had shown, it had mattered more than she could have imagined. For the first time, she saw Thomas not just as the humble janitor she had helped and admired, but as a man with a life full of power, influence, and intention, yet who had chosen humility and patience above arrogance. Samantha realized that true wealth was not measured by money, but by integrity, compassion, and the courage to see people for who they truly are. And in that quiet courtyard, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she knew their lives were about to change forever. After Thomas revealed his secret, Samantha felt a whirlwind of emotions. She couldn't believe the man she had admired and helped was not just extraordinary in kindness, but also in wealth and influence. Yet, as she looked into his eyes, she realized it wasn't the money or status that had mattered. It was the integrity and quiet strength he carried, the way he had treated her, noticed her courage, and valued her kindness above all else, created a connection that felt deeper than anything she had ever experienced. For the next few days, their interactions changed subtly but significantly. Samantha noticed that Thomas's smiles lingered longer, his gaze more attentive, and his conversations more personal. He shared stories of his travels, his work, and the challenges he faced while building his empire. Yet he always circled back to the values that had guided him: humility, honesty, and compassion. Samantha listened, captivated, feeling as if she were seeing the real Thomas for the first time, the man behind the humble janitor and the wealthy billionaire. One afternoon, as they walked through a nearby park after work, Thomas paused by a fountain, the sunlight sparkling off the water. "You know, Samantha," he said softly, "most people are impressed by what I have, but you were impressed by who I am." Samantha smiled, a warm feeling spreading in her chest. "I always knew there was more to you," she said. "I just had to see it." They laughed together, a sound full of ease and familiarity. And for a moment, the world seemed to shrink around them, leaving only the two of them. Their friendship began to blossom into something deeper, a quiet romance built on mutual respect, trust, and admiration. Thomas would find small ways to surprise her: a handwritten note, a thoughtful message, or a small gesture of care, and Samantha responded with laughter, warmth, and gentle teasing. They shared coffee breaks, evening walks, and long conversations about dreams and values, each moment strengthening the bond that had begun with kindness and courage. One rainy evening, as they shared an umbrella walking home, Thomas spoke quietly. "I never imagined that someone like you would see me for who I truly am. Without judgment or expectation, you believed in me before anyone else did, and that means more than words can express." Samantha looked up at him, her heart swelling. "I didn't see you as a janitor, Thomas. I saw you as a person, someone kind, strong, and brave." Their eyes met, and in that moment, there was an unspoken understanding, a recognition that their lives had changed forever. Over the following weeks, the office noticed a subtle shift in Thomas's demeanor as well. He moved with quiet confidence, but his humility remained, and Samantha was always by his side, supporting, laughing, and sharing in the small joys of everyday life. Together, they became a source of inspiration, a living example of how kindness, empathy, and genuine connection could transcend appearances and social boundaries. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, Thomas and Samantha sat on a bench overlooking the park, sharing stories about their childhoods and dreams for the future. He took her hand gently. "Samantha, I want you to know that everything I've done, everything I've built, it means nothing if I can't share it with someone who understands me." Samantha squeezed his hand, feeling a warmth that went beyond affection. "I understand, Thomas, and I always will." In that quiet moment, the bond between them deepened, solidified not by wealth or status, but by trust, respect, and genuine love. From that day on, their relationship grew stronger, filled with laughter, support, and quiet romance. Samantha felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known, knowing that her kindness and courage had been recognized and cherished. And Thomas, in turn, felt a profound appreciation for someone who had seen him truly, without expectation or prejudice. Together, they realized that love built on respect and understanding was far more valuable than anything money could buy. Little did they know, the challenges and surprises of the outside world were still ahead, but with their hearts and minds united, they were ready to face whatever came next, knowing that their bond, forged through acts of courage, empathy, and mutual admiration, would guide them through any storm. The days after Thomas's revelation brought a whirlwind of change for both him and Samantha. Office colleagues who had once ignored Thomas now began to notice him differently. Some were curious, some envious, but all were intrigued by the quiet, humble man who had quietly earned their respect. Samantha had noticed the subtle shifts in behavior, people treating him with a polite deference they had never shown before. Yet, Thomas remained the same gentle, grounded man she had come to admire, never letting wealth or status change his core values. Samantha and Thomas spent more time together outside the office, discovering shared interests and simple joys. They went for evening walks in the city, visited small cafes, and even attended charity events together. Though Thomas could have surrounded himself with luxury, he preferred moments that felt genuine, where he could be himself without pretension. Samantha cherished these moments, feeling a sense of belonging and happiness she had never known. Their bond grew stronger, not just from romance, but from a mutual respect and understanding that had formed the foundation of their relationship. One Saturday afternoon, Thomas invited Samantha to a private gallery event, subtly revealing glimpses of his extravagant life. Samantha was amazed by the beauty, the elegance, and the scale of everything, but she also noticed the thoughtfulness behind it, the way Thomas had made sure she felt comfortable and appreciated. He whispered quietly, "I wanted to share this with you, but only after I knew you would see me. Not my money, but who I truly am." Samantha smiled, her heart full, realizing that this was more than generosity. It was trust, a gift of his true self. Back at the office, the dynamics had shifted further. Some employees who had mocked Thomas before now found themselves admiring his composure and humility. Yet, a few remained skeptical, unable to reconcile the janitor they had ignored with the billionaire they now knew. Samantha, however, stood by him without hesitation, her support unwavering. Every small act of kindness she had shown him months ago now felt magnified, a reminder that courage and empathy had the power to change lives. As their relationship deepened, Thomas shared more about his dreams and aspirations, not just for wealth, but for making a meaningful impact on people's lives. Samantha listened, fascinated, realizing that his vision extended far beyond business, touching communities, education, and charitable causes. She felt proud and inspired, knowing that the man she admired for his character also used his influence to do good in the world. Their conversations often stretched into the evenings, filled with laughter, plans, and moments of quiet reflection. One evening, as they sat together on a rooftop overlooking the city lights, Thomas turned to Samantha and said softly, "I never expected to find someone like you, someone who sees beyond appearances and understands the value of kindness and courage. You've changed my life just by being yourself." Samantha's eyes glistened. "And you've changed mine, Thomas, by showing me that people are more than they seem, and that love can be found in the most unexpected places." They held hands, feeling the depth of their connection, knowing that what they shared was rare, pure, and unbreakable. The weeks that followed were filled with a blend of excitement, discovery, and growing love. Thomas continued to share his life with Samantha, from business insights to personal reflections, and Samantha continued to support and admire him. Their bond became a source of inspiration for others, a living example of how respect, empathy, and courage could bridge worlds and social boundaries. By the end of Part 7, Samantha and Thomas had not only found love in each other, but had also discovered a shared purpose to uplift, inspire, and live authentically. Their journey was far from over, but they faced it together, stronger, wiser, and more connected than ever. The world might continue to judge, envy, or misunderstand them, but within the quiet strength of their partnership, they had everything they needed to face any challenge and embrace the future with hope and love. The morning sunlight streamed through the office windows, casting a warm glow over the desks and chairs. Samantha and Thomas arrived together, their presence noticeable yet calm. People whispered quietly, still surprised at the unusual pairing. But for Samantha and Thomas, the outside opinions no longer mattered. Their bond had been tested, strengthened, and proven, built on respect, understanding, and genuine kindness. That day, Samantha walked beside Thomas as he moved through the office, greeting colleagues with a gentle nod. She noticed how differently everyone treated him now. With polite smiles and cautious respect, some were still skeptical, but it no longer bothered them. The world's judgment had little power over a connection forged in empathy and courage. During lunch, they stepped outside to a quiet park nearby. The air crisp and refreshing. Thomas stopped near a small bench and looked at Samantha with a soft smile. He said quietly, life has a funny way of rewarding those who act with kindness and integrity. I never expected to find someone like you. Someone who sees the person, not the title or wealth. Samantha felt her heart swell. And I never expected to find someone like you. Someone so humble yet extraordinary. Someone whose character shines brighter than any fortune. Their hands met, fingers intertwining, and in that simple gesture, the depth of their journey was understood. Weeks turned into months, and Samantha and Thomas continued building a life together. Their relationship grew stronger, filled with laughter, quiet evenings, shared dreams, and small acts of love that mattered more than grand gestures. Thomas continued his work with businesses and charities, yet he remained grounded, never letting wealth change the essence of who he was. Samantha supported him, admired him, and became his partner in both life and purpose. One afternoon, as they hosted a small gathering for friends and colleagues, Thomas shared stories of his journey, of the struggles he had faced and the lessons he had learned. He spoke of kindness, integrity, and the power of seeing people for who they truly are. Samantha watched him, filled with pride and love, realizing that their story was not just about unexpected romance or wealth, but about the transformation that empathy and courage can bring to people's lives. After the guests left, they walked hand in hand through the quiet streets, their hearts light and their minds at peace. Do you ever think about how it all began? Samantha asked, smiling softly. Thomas chuckled. Every day I remember that small act of kindness, the way you stood by me when no one else did. It changed everything. Samantha nodded, understanding fully that sometimes the smallest gestures could create the biggest impact. As they sat on a bench overlooking the city skyline, the lights twinkling like stars, Thomas turned to Samantha and said, life has a way of rewarding courage and kindness, but also gives the greatest gifts to those who remain true to themselves. You've shown me that love, respect, and understanding are far more valuable than any fortune. Samantha leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling a sense of completeness. And you've shown me that people are worth more than appearances, and that's true. Connection is the greatest treasure of all. In that quiet moment, both understood the journey they had shared, from the first act of protection to the revelation of wealth, from laughter and conversation to love and partnership. Their story had touched hearts, inspired hope, and proven that integrity and kindness could overcome prejudice, assumptions, and even the most unexpected circumstances. And so, their lives continued, not just as a billionaire and a compassionate woman, but as partners, equals, and a living example of how courage, empathy, and genuine respect can change lives. They knew challenges would come, as they always do, but together they were ready to face the world, stronger, wiser, and bound by a love that began with a simple act of kindness. In the end, Samantha realized the greatest reward wasn't wealth, power, or recognition, but the deep connection she had built with a man who saw her heart. And Thomas realized that the greatest fortune in life was finding someone who believed in him for who he truly was. And as they walked into the evening, hand in hand, their story stood as a testament to the power of respect, courage, and love that transcends all boundaries.